What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. Taking a look at this 2010 Chevy Traverse with the 3.6 liter, the LLT. The concern on this one was that every now and then, while driving at highway speeds, you can feel this intermittent stumble or a little hesitation, almost like a fish bite misfire or a transmission shift issue. This is the fiance's car. So I've already got 3 injectors straight from GM, right from Mexico, genuine parts to replace the injectors that I believe are the issue. I went to fuel injection right away. There's no codes, no DTCs stored. Looked at fuel trims, already did all that. That's not going to be much help here. Ran into this issue on these 3.6s before, and 9 times out of 10, it's usually an injection-related issue or an ignition-related issue. You know, there's certainly a possibility it could be ignition, but based on my experience and based on what I was seeing or feeling, I was leaning towards injection. Now, I'm confident that it's injection because I went ahead and just bought 3 injectors. I also ran the active fuel injector tester made by Kent Moore, which is a very expensive tool that the factory we have at the dealership. Went ahead and did that after hours on this and ran it on all 6 injectors and got their flow rates. We will show that video footage of that and those test results so that you guys have an idea of how that works. I'm at home filming with my son Grant, and we are putting this video together on a weekend. So hopefully he gets some learning out of this. Hopefully I get some learning out of this. You guys get some learning out of this, and then we can kind of dive into these injector circuits. We're going to get the high and the low side drivers on these injectors. We're going to get amperage on them and current. We've already looked at this prior to filming, so we're trying to make this as efficient as possible so that we can get the best bang for our buck. With that being said, hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. Right, so first thing we want to do is we want to go to that X1 connector on our PCM. I might say ECU, ECM, PCM, whatever, engine control module, okay? So we're going to go to our ECU, we're going to get the X1 connector. I've already put the piercing probes in place for the ease of testing, guys, and we've already unwrapped the harness ahead of time. But, to get this off, you have your cover with your lever, right? Pretty straightforward. Now you have to pop that over them tangs, and you got to be very careful because the plastic gets brittle, okay? So you don't want to break these. It's not a big deal if you do break them, guys. There is a way to secure it without, it's just not going to look pretty anymore. But be careful. So our X1 connector, this is our X1 connector, the 72 pin I believe it is, and then this is our X2 connector. We're after X1. And we will pop that pin out up in the corner for you guys so that you can see the pin outs as I'm explaining. So to get this released, real straightforward, we're just going to pull it up manually with this pocket screwdriver. Like that. Unplug. And then we're going to start off doing, since this engine's been sitting overnight, let's start off by doing a cold resistance measurement on all 6 injectors. We'll record the resistance measurements cold, and then we'll jump into the scope testing. Now, I did do a short video out there in Facebook on one of the groups in Cody's group, Auto MD, and got some feedback from some of the more experienced guys out there. Like, trust me, there's a lot more experienced guys out there than myself. And, nobody learns. None of my knowledge that I have is technically my knowledge. It's knowledge that I've gathered from other guys in the field, books, other technicians, training, experience. It is what it is. But nevertheless, what we're going to do is we're going to do the resistance measurements cold. That way we have a base resistance measurement on them cold. We'll run it. We'll check them on cold starts here with the lab scope. We're going to get the high side, the low side driver, and the current ramps for each one individually. What a gentleman out there in that Facebook group was saying, I believe his name is Ray, is that he's like, hey, you can take either all your control wires or all your high side driver wires, put them all together here, zip tie them together, make yourself one bundle, put your amp clamp around there and get all the current ramps at the same time, and then just basically take another channel, let's say to the control for injector number 1, and then you got to sync. Using firing order, you should be able to tell what amp ramps are for what. That's a great idea. I think we're going to try that. But first I want to do each one individually for the ease of looking at the waveforms, okay? So, getting into this, all your injectors going to the X1 connector are a twisted pair, okay? Your control wires are all going to be the solid colors. So all our low side driver or control wires for these injectors are the solid brown, the solid light blue, and the solid purple, and so on and so forth. The ones with the white tracer are our high side driver feeds to these direct, because this is a direct injection engine. So those are the high side feeds, which are also a control. Okay, they're controlled on the high side driver and they're controlled on the low side driver, guys. Okay, so anyways, injector number 1. Injector number 1 is on pin, our high side driver, the brown white, is pin 75 on the ECM connector here. So we're going to do all our resistance measurements, front probing from the connector, and we're disconnected, so this is isolating our injectors, our injector circuit. We're going to do a resistance measurement from the X1 connector at the PCM through the injectors, okay? Hope that makes sense. Now we could certainly go back here to this connector. This connector is also on our wiring diagram back here. I'd have to reference that. We did so. If you look at the wiring diagram here, right there, you'll see that connector right there is drawn on the wiring diagram, okay? You could certainly test back there, but why test there when it's easy and it's right here and you're getting it? This will rule out everything all the way down through the injectors. All right, so to do this, I use these little pins. Now, you got to be careful stuffing pins into an ECM connector because you can spread them and damage them. These generally are okay on these. I've never had issues with it. Ideally, you'd want to have the right probing tool, but as long as you're jamming them in there real hard, you don't have to worry about spreading the terminals. So we're looking for pins 75 and 51. Pins 75 and 51, which is our brown, white, and our brown wire. You can also go from the back side and look. So right here, our brown, white, and our brown. Pin 75, what did I say? 75 and 51. So that's going to be these ones right here. Okay. This one. And this one. Okay. We're going to turn our meter on to our resistance. And we're just going to kind of hold them in there. You want to kind of hold them steady because you don't want your resistance measurements being fluctuating. Okay, now ideally before we do this, whenever you're doing a resistance measurement, you want to zero out your own meter. And just put the two pins together like this. If you look, you can see our 0.8, and it's really hard on these back probes to get them to stay steady. So just hold them steady like that till it like balances out sometime. There we go. And then we're going to hit REL. And that's going to clear it to 0. Basically calibrated it. And reprobe. Again, we're checking injector 1 for resistance. All right, there we go. We're in on it. Now let it sit. And we're getting what? 1.6 ohms. So 1.6 ohms on injector 1. Let's check injector 2. Injector 2 is our dark blue white and our dark blue, pins 53 and 52. That one. And that one. Now take a look at that, huh? That's why you gotta hold the pin steady. 1.5 ohms. 1.6 ohms. So about 1.6 on injector 2. Let's check injector 3. Dark green white, pins 27 and 26. So the dark green and the dark green white. That's this one right here. And this one right there. So we're going to hold them steady. Again, this is injector 3's resistance. And 3 was, so 1.5 on that one. 1.6, 1.5 on 3. Right? Alright, injector 4. Light blue, white, light blue. That's pins 74 and 50. So our light blue and our light blue white. That's this one. And that one. And that is injector 4. 1.5. So far, injector 1 was 1.6, right? 1.6 on injector 1, 1.5-ish on injector 2, 1.5-ish on injector 3, 1.5-ish on injector 4. So the ones that had flow issues get a little bit less resistance, okay? Let's check injector 5. Light green, white, light green. Pins 28, 29. That's this one. And that one. Okay, so hold those in there nice and steady.
1.6.
1.6 on injector 5. Again, so not much of a resistance difference there, but of course we got to keep in mind that these are cold. So as heat comes up, resistance will change, right? Given that the ones that are having flow issues the flow test was done when this engine was hot, super hot, okay? So let's keep that in mind. Injector 6, last one, purple, white, purple. So 1, 2, 3. In all, I'm counting over from the right side of the connector. That's not their pin numbers. Again, look at the diagram. You'll see what the pin numbers are there. We could certainly do it that way too, but I'm just doing it based on visual. All right, so let's see what we got on injector 6. And that one's kind of fluctuating. My leads are moving. Let me get it steady here. So
1.5.
1.5 on injector 6. Let's double check cylinder 1 again. That was the brown, white. So about 1.5 on all of them. And that is what? That's the third one's in. Maybe these ones right here. Let's see if we're getting on number 1 again. All right, hold that one nice and steady. Yeah. So we're getting 1.5 ohms on all 6 injectors, okay? So that's good to know. We're done with that. Now let's jump into the, let's start scoping these. Put this off to the side. So we're gonna show you guys how to set up the scope. To do this, again, we're using the Snap-on Zeus. So if you got a Pico or any other type of scope, it's going to be a little different. But for those of you using the snap-on, this should be helpful. So we're going to set it right here. Wonder if we shouldn't, yeah. Okay, so let me grab the test leads. Alright, so we're going to start with injector 1. That's our quote-unquote known good. Whoa. Losing stuff here. So, first lead we're going to start with is the yellow. Doesn't matter. I mean, we can use any color really. But yellow is going to go to yellow. Green's going to go to green, just to keep it simple. So we've got our ground on our scope. We've got trace A or yellow, or trace 1, trace 2, trace B, green, trace 3, so on and so forth, right? Pretty straightforward. Traces 1 and 2 have to be grounded, okay? They have to be grounded to battery ground. We want to go to battery ground, okay? Always try to go back to source, which is battery. On this, we're going to use the grounding lug under the hood because I know it's good, but ideally you'd want to go right down to battery. Now, when you're setting a snap-on scope up, since we're going to be using 3 traces, the yellow and the green have to be grounded together. You have to provide a ground for these. These 2 are grounded internal to the lab scope, blue and red, so we don't have to actually put a jumper ground to the yellow, okay? The yellow ground that looks like this goes in our ground port on the scope, okay? This one is for stacking the other grounds, okay? So now our yellow's hooked up, so let's hook up our green. So yellow is going to be our high side driver on the injector, on all of them, and green's going to be our low side driver or our control. We're going to stack these 2 grounds together, like that, okay? Put our scope off to the side here. And then you've got the other side of your leads, okay? This is our ground. Now, Snap-on don't give you very long ones with their leads, so sometimes you have to extend this. So you're gonna wanna make sure you have the capability to do that, which you do, in my opinion, if you wanna go the cheap route. Buy yourself one of these guys, a 30-foot test lead, retractable. You can solder it, make it look all pretty, but I don't have that kind of time in the shop sometimes, and I don't want to mess with it. So I just heat shrink some butt connectors on there. Bought these ends, these banana ends from Matco, from a front, you know, when I buy my back probes, and I just cut off the stupid little alligators they give you, and I put these on here. And all I got to do then, if I need to extend my ground, is just alligator on there, put the other side, put an alligator on the other side, and hook it to battery ground, or positive, or whatever you want to do, and you got 30 feet to work with. However you want to do it, that's how I do it. That's what it's for. Anyways, moving on. We're hooked to ground. Now you can see this is where the problem is. See how I just pulled my ground off? So if I wanted to use this extension, what I do, give yourself a little room. Okay, we'll just stick with the black. Now, don't pay attention to these colors. It didn't matter. I didn't care. But you just gotta pay attention. This is the black, right? This is gonna go to my ground on my scope lead here. I'm just gonna take the alligator, get a good clip on it. Okay, now I can go wherever I want with it. And then I'm gonna take the other side here, which is the other black, right? Don't pay attention to the green. I added these, the black, and we're just gonna put a clip on there. Somewhere. I don't really care about the colors. Just pay attention to what you're doing. So this is going to ground. There we go. Now I've just extended my ground for my scope. Now I can get a lot more room. Take our yellow again. We're gonna go into the high side driver of injector 1. We're gonna have to extend this, get them lined up. Plug this back into our ECU. Okay, and we're looking for our brown. Our high side driver is going to be the one with the white tracer right there. Plug that into our Pomona piercing probe, which is already installed. And then we want our high side driver is yellow, brown, white. Low side driver is solid brown, so that's going to be the green. We got a lot of probes here, so. All right, there. So now our high side and our low side driver are hooked up on the lab scope. Let's hook up our low amp clamp. Now we're going to be doing, we won't need the blue and the red right now. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting amperage. So if you take a look here, we're going to be doing amperage on these injectors. Now I can tell you these injectors shouldn't draw more than 20 amps. So if we click it to the 20 amp mode up here, I'll turn it off now so I can save my battery, but 100 millivolts per amp is going to be, we're going to use voltage. We're not going to use the auto settings on this scope because I just never do. 100 millivolts per amp. If I want a 20 amp scale, it's going to be a 2 volt scale, okay? Because there's 100, there's 10. 100 millivolts goes into 1 volt 10 times. Makes sense? So 1 volt is equivalent to 10 amps. 2 volts is equivalent to 20 amps on the lab scope. We're just doing the math. Gotta use your brain sometimes. This is gonna go into channel 3, or blue trace, and the red side of the amp clamp will go into our blue, and then the ground side will just stack on our yellow. And we're done. Hooking it up anyways. Okay, so to hook up the amp clamp, it doesn't matter which way we can go around the control, the low side driver or the high side. Now what Ray was saying is to zip tie them all together. We'll have to do that once we take all the Pomonas off because I just don't have the room. But we're gonna get around number 1's high side, because I know voltage is going out on the high side driver wire, which is our brown with the white tracer. We want to put our polarity with the little arrow going out towards the injector, okay? So that'd be like this. However, if you do go backwards, not a big deal. It's just your amperage on the lab scope is gonna be upside down. So just for training purposes, I'll show you what it looks like if you put it upside down for the first capture and what to do to fix it. We're gonna put the arrow going the wrong way, the wrong polarity, and our waveform is gonna be upside down. Before we hook this up, what we want to do is zero it. So let's go to the lab scope real quick. We'll open it up so we get a pic. All right, so you want to go into scope, multimeter, lab scope. I'm going to use the 4-channel lab scope. Okay, and we're going to bring it up. And come on, there we go. All right, and we're gonna turn all 3 traces on over here. Okay, they're all in the test volts DC probe setting. You're gonna see that some are gonna have filters on them. I'm gonna take all them off. We are going to take off our inverted, and you're gonna see that the blue trace is noisy.
We're gonna need that stylist.
Yeah, I'll grab it. The yellow traces are high side driver. Green traces are low side driver. Let me bring this up here. There we go. We're gonna overlay all these together so that everything's smooth. You can see all that noise in there. If we turn our filter on our amp clamp, it's gonna filter out all that noise. All right, and then we want to change our scaling. We're gonna want 100 volt scales on these. So our high side, we're gonna switch to 100 volt scale. Our low side, we're gonna switch to 100 volt scale. And then we're gonna set our amp clamp to a 2 volt scale for 20 amps worth of range, okay? For our time base down here, where it says 2 milliseconds, I'm gonna go on a 5 millisecond screen. That'll give us fairly good detail. The lower the the time base, the more detail you're going to get with the snap-on when you zoom it. But you also are going to lose, time. So you got to play with the snap-ons they're a little bit more tricky than your Picos. All right, so now getting back to the amp clamp. Now that that's set up, what we want to do is we want to turn this on. We're going to turn it on the low amp 20 setting. Okay. And then we're going to hit our 0 button, and you'll see on the scope there the blue trace move when I hit it. We're just going to hit it a few times and 0 it. And then we're going to take, again, the arrow should be going out, but I'm going to hook it up backwards to show you what it looks like when it's upside down. You go right in here. It's a tight fit. Get around that high side driver wire, and that's all there is to it. Okay, so let's get into what we're going to look at here now. Is we're going to actually start it up and get the capture on number 1. Before I do that, since we're all set up, let's overlay these. So I'm going to take the green trace, put it right over the blue as best I can. I'm using the stylus because my fingers will screw it up for sure. And then the yellow trace will do the same thing. And the reason I want these all lined up is so that it's nice, good capture. All right, go ahead and fire it up, Grant. Okay, so we're getting our captures. I'm gonna put a trigger on the screen real quick. Go to setup. Trigger. We're going to trigger off of trace 1. And that's going to hold our waveform as it's running. We're going to move our trigger over. Okay? You can see our amperage is upside down. That's because we got that amp clamp hooked up backwards as far as polarity goes. So what we're going to want to do is hit the inverted option on trace 2, and it's going to flip it up for us. So it's not a big deal if you hook it up backwards. You just got to be aware of that. All right, so there is injector 1. That's interesting. We're getting different amperage on injector 1 now than I was last night. I don't know why. No, keep it running. All right, we're gonna hit stop. All right, shut it off, Grant. All right, so there's our capture on number 1. That looks different than what I was getting last night. I don't know if I screwed something up when I was hooking that up, but it's very possible. Because the amperage is way different than what I was getting. So I don't know if I had something set up screwy or what, but that is different than what I was getting last night. That looks really good though. I capture. Now, what I want to do is I want to save this. So let's hit File, Save All Frames. We're going to name this Injector 1 before. I don't know why that's different. But it is. However, that's a nice clean capture. Now, if I wanted to zoom out and look at the parading of this injector, I can see it now as I hit the zoom out, right? If I want to go to any one of these along the line here and zoom in on them, I move this dotted line to where I want to zoom, okay? So if I want to zoom over here, I want to zoom over here, doesn't really matter. Let's just pick one right here, bring it in. And as we get in more, you get that detail, okay? Again, I've got it set up already for good detail. If I want even more detail, I could go to a 2 millisecond screen. But I'm going to keep them on a 5 millisecond. It seems to be the sweet spot for these. We've already saved this capture, so we can always come back and reference it later. So let's get on injector number 2. So to do that, all we're going to do is we're going to hit record again. And And then let me move the amp clamp to our dark blue, white, dark blue. It's going to be this one. So again, our traces are all going to be the same. Yellow is our high side driver. Green is our low side driver. All right, we're all set. Go ahead and start it, Grant. Again, we're on Injector. This is Injector 2. Look at that. It's kind of cool how it does that on the initial startup. And then it goes away. And I noticed that on Injector 2, that it was doing that, and I don't know why. So let's let that run for a minute here. Or a few seconds, rather. Stop it. All right, you can kill it, Grant. So there's our, there's our waveform on Injector 2. There is a difference there. I believe, let me save this capture real quick. You got the key off, Grant?
Yeah.
Okay. So Injector 2, do you want to replace it? Yes. I don't know why it's different than what I was getting last night, okay? I have no idea. Again, I'm learning here too. There is some differences here. We'll look at that in more depth here, but let me zoom out. You're going to notice something different on Injector 2. Injector 2 is missing amperages. You can see it drops out every other. There's no amperage. So it fires and then it doesn't fire. It fires and then it doesn't fire. But it's almost like it's got an extra pulse in there. And I don't know why it does. Why does it have that extra pulse on there compared to Injector 1? So let me hit OK on that. We've already saved that, but if you look here, this is what we were seeing last night. So that's the same. We were seeing this extra high side driver this high side driver waveform in the middle of them, and I'm not sure why that's there. I really couldn't tell you. Okay. But when we look at that in comparison to the first injector, Injector number 1, you're going to see the differences, okay? All right, so let's get on Injector number 3 right away. What is Injector number 3? Dark green, white, dark green. So let's go ahead and move over to him. I don't think I'm set up to test that one. I'm going to have to pierce that one quick because I haven't set that one up yet. I'm going to show you guys the setup here. How to set this, set up the probes. I had to steal a couple because I'm short. We're going to move a few of them since we've already got the captures on 1 and 2. And we're on number 3. We're going to steal 1 and 2s and move them over to 3 and 5, because 3 and 5 I never did get set up. Let me grab the one off number 1 here. We're already done with that capture. And we'll fix these pierce holes after. And you can see I had to unwrap back a ways. I didn't want to go right up by the main connector. And I haven't unwrapped number 3 yet. Number 3 is this dark green one right here. So let's get rid of this tape quick. And I'll get this set up. There's not a lot of room when they're twisted like this, so it's kind of a bear to get set up, but once it's set up, it's not so bad. So let's untwist this pair here. I'm just gonna go backwards with it.
Literally, setup is the hardest part. The testing is the easy part. It's the setup. It takes the longest. I try to pierce in generally the same spot on all of them so that I know where to clean everything up, make it look nice again, and make sure all the poke holes, which there's only one per wire, but they got to be repaired. Some electrical, liquid electrical, or nail polish or something. Okay, so there, that one's in there. The last one we need to get is our, I believe it's number 5, right? Yeah, light green, white, and light green. That's this one. So let's get that one set up right away, since we're getting in all of them. Again, I probably wouldn't even do this in the shop, but it'd just be too time consuming unless it was really a difficult diagnosis or something, then I probably would, but I would already be done. I'd put injectors in it, call it a day. Alright, so now we're ready to hook up. So let's get on to number 3. Dark green, white, dark green. That's this one. Dark green, white's our high side. That's that one. That's our low side.
Alright. Fire it up. Alright, he's gonna start her up. We'll go ahead and record. Got my waveform upside down on my amperage, so just invert it. And that one's doing the same thing. It's not from my trigger, because I tested that theory last night. Alright, you can shut it off. So again, this is Injector 3. You can see that one's doing the same thing. It's got that extra waveform in there, but it's not building amperage in between there. I'm not sure why that's there. That might be completely normal for numbers 2 and 3. I don't know. So we're gonna zoom in on this one. There we go. So there's Injector 3. All right, so let's get a look at Injector number 4. That's our light blue white and our light blue. Before we do that, I gotta save that. Save all frames. That's Injector 3. Injector 3 before. Save. Okay, let's get on Injector number 4. That is light blue, white, light blue. So light blue is our low side driver, and light blue white is our high side driver. Again, yellow's high side, green's low side control, and blue is amperage. All right, go ahead, Grant, start it up. Again, this is Injector 4. You can see that initial test, those extra pulses that are in there. Interesting. Yeah, let's hit stop on that. Okay, you can shut it off. Save all frames. Okay, we just saved that. on to injector 5. That is our light green, white, and our light green. Okay. Again, high side driver, light green, white, low side driver, light green. All right. Go ahead and start it. Again, all I gotta do is hit the invert and it's gonna bring my amperage up. For some reason I lost. There we go. Okay. Again, this one's got that extra pulse in there in the middle, and I'm not sure what that's all about. With the high side driver's operating, but the low side isn't. But obviously there's no injector activity because there's no amperage. Okay, so there is injector 5. All right, we're going to save all that. Okay, on injector 6, that is our purple and purple white. All right, go ahead and fire it up. Okay, you can shut it off. Okay, well, save that one quick. All right,